Everyone, welcome to Ask Impact. My name is Morna Lee and I'm the Marketing and Client Manager at Impact. Today we'll be sharing the insights we gathered from delivering 4,000 hours of coaching senior leaders during COVID to help you navigate the second wave. I'm thrilled to share we have the founder of Impact, Sandra Oliver, and one of our senior business coaches, Sarah Smith, will be the host for today. We recognize lots of names here, but for those of you who don't know us, Impact is a recognized global leader in business coaching. And we partner with large organizations in various industries all around the world to develop their talent. Before we get started, I wanted to go over some housekeeping. I want to keep this session as interactive as possible. So please remember to make comments and ask questions along the way. All you have to do is type in your questions and comments in the chat section, not the Q&As, and make sure you address both the panelists and attendees so everyone can see. I'll make sure I monitor this section so we can address as many questions as we can. I also recommend that you also set your settings to speaker view so you can see both Sandra and Sarah when they respond. I'll have Stephanie post these tips on the chat section for your reference. Now I'll pass it over to Sandra and Sarah to get started.
Thanks, Morna, and welcome everybody. We had quite a bit of interest in this webinar, which is lovely. So lots of familiar names and lots of people showing interest. I think, you know, in talking to a couple of our clients about it, they sort of said, you know what, we all, everybody's pretty interested right now in this topic because you know, we have been 9 months in a situation that is to use an overused term, unprecedented, and we want to kind of hear what everybody else is doing. And I think the nice thing about coaching is that people like Sarah and I get to talk to people like you all day, every day. So we hear on the ground what everybody's doing. So we're going to try and focus today's webinar on the kinds of things we're hearing, less on sort of stats and data. There's lots of that stuff out there, but what we're hearing. So there are 3 things we want to cover with you. The first is, what's the current state? 9 months in, how are people feeling? What's going on? And we like to call it the good, the bad, and the ugly, because there's some good stuff, there's some not so good stuff, and then there's some stuff we're concerned about from a long-term standpoint. We also want to share with you some of the innovative things we're seeing clients do. And then finally, we want to talk about what could you be doing now, what should you be doing now to motivate and energize people and come out even better after you've gone through this adversity. So we'll kind of cover those questions. We're going to really work at trying to get this done. We've all got timers. So if you see us looking down, we all have timers. We're going to make sure that we try and get this done 15, 20 minutes in so that you can ask questions. We've already had a whole bunch of questions that we'll try and fit in. Whatever questions we can answer, we will make sure we get you answers back. So feel free to reach out if there's things that you want to chat with us about. So I'm going to start with Morna, if you want to put up the change curve, I'm going to start with what we're calling the COVID change curve. So this may look familiar to lots of you. This is not a new concept. This was developed in 1969, I think, by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. This change curve is based on the 7 stages of grief. Okay, and it seems really relevant. We've found lots of clients find it really relevant because there's lots about COVID that involves loss of lots of things we're used to doing, but also every change involves a certain amount of loss. So if you look at the left-hand side of this curve, you see what happens when people go through change: shock, denial, frustration, depression. People basically sort of cycle in those areas. And whenever you go through a change, your objective is to try and come up the left side, right? And start to experiment with new things, make decisions about your life and how you're going to integrate that change, and come out a stronger person or a stronger organization in the end. And if you look at what happens with the curve, is if you get yourself through that diversity, as you get yourself through that diversity, you're building new skill sets, new capability, your morale goes up because you've gone through the adversity and you've learned something, and you are stronger and better either as a company or as an individual at the end. So that's the change curve that we think is really valuable for you to think about. The thing that we're hearing a lot from clients right now is that people are feeling flat. So we feel like a lot of our clients, leaders, sort of their morale, we're hearing lots of data around pulse survey results kind of dropping. They're in that lower part of the change curve. They're kind of stuck in that depression piece, and we really feel like they need to be moving up because, you know, we've been waiting. We've been waiting for COVID to be over. We've been waiting for people to go back to work. We've been waiting to have Christmas. Or whatever holidays, we've been waiting, right? And what we need to do as leaders start to move people kind of up that curve. Sarah, why don't you fill us in a little bit on what leaders need to be doing at each stage in that curve? Because I think you guys
Yeah,
will find it
great.
inspiring.
Thanks, Sandra. So, you know, part of why we see this curve applying so well is if you think about where it originates from a death, you know, people have support systems when they go through something like that. And as with any change, leaders' roles in leading through that change are really important. But it depends on where the team or the individual or the organization is in this curve in terms of how the leaders need to show up to help them to move along. So Morna, if you can add that. So for when folks are sitting in that sort of front end of the curve where it's actually ripe with a lot of quite negative emotions, shock, denial, anger, frustration, the leader role is to listen. And overwhelmingly, leaders did a really great job of this at the beginning of the pandemic. People were doing a ton of check-ins with their staff, making sure they were taking pulses, those kinds of things. That was really well done. As Sandra said, when people move into sort of the bottom of the curve, emotions go flat, energy goes flat, then the role of the leader really does have to shift, and it's into being more directive. And so as Sandra said, we're hearing from a lot of clients that people are sort of here. And so how do you show up as a more directive leader right now? Well, really it's around bringing clarity to folks. So clarity of roles, clarity of expectation around what is the output that is expected, what is the output around quality, what behaviors are expected, clarity around the strategy or the mandate or the vision of the team. That's what we mean by being directive. And then as folks begin to move out of the curve into beginning to experiment with new things, maybe based on some of that direction, making decisions, then again, the leadership role shifts again to being more of that traditional facilitated leader, right? Where you're less directive, but very, very much involved. So the leader's role is very critical through all the stages of this curve. It changes. And it also requires being quite attuned to where your team is, where your staff is, where the organization is at any given time.
And I think right now during COVID, this is a difficult thing for leaders to do. And you know, is to start to think about how can I help people kind of move up? How can I do it in a thoughtful, caring kind of way? Because we still need to keep that. That's one of the good things out of COVID. Let's flip to the good things out of COVID. Morna, you can take the slide down. So, you know, first good thing, two, I think. One is that leaders got really, really connected, as Sarah already said, which is awesome. I think every HR person I've ever met thought that was the most wonderful thing that they've ever seen. And I think the leaders did too, although I know that it's also a lot of pressure on the leaders. But also people love working at home. So that's pretty well universal. I don't know what the numbers are. They are up in the 80s or 90% because people have added lots of pulse surveys and lots of our clients. People like working from home. They like not having the commute. They like being around their families. There are lots of stresses. They maybe don't want to do it all the time, but people have gotten really good at being virtual. So that is a universal positive we've seen across all clients that I think when you're thinking about one of our clients likes to call the next new normal, you want to be incorporating that in some way.
Yeah, another really good outcome here is that really people are noticing that talent and the talent pool is global. So that's on the corporations side where you're able to access global talent. So whether it's scarce or diverse talent that you're looking for, and people are also able to hire across the globe because people are working remotely. And that actually opens up different price points potentially around acquiring that talent as well. At the individual level, we're also seeing people recognize that they don't necessarily have to be in the same place they were in the past in order to contribute effectively. They can work anywhere. And we're seeing a significant number of our clients actually make permanent changes in this regard, actually selling their homes to move to maybe a lower cost neighborhood or even working in totally different parts of the world.
lots of people going back to the Atlantic, I have to say. There was an article on it, and we've certainly heard that from our Atlantic clients, because for those of you who aren't aware, there is a nice bubble in the Atlantic. They don't have a lot of cases. So secondly, another big thing that another big positive is everybody's saving money. Individuals are saving money because, you know, they can wear their jeans instead of new suits. They can, you know, they don't have the commute to deal with. And businesses are saving money, less real estate, less spent on travel, less entertainment. People are pitching deals as salespeople on this screen, and there's no, you know, bells and whistles required. So companies are also saving some money. So keeping some of this virtual world is beneficial to everybody from a general administrative cost standpoint. Let's go to some of the bad stuff. So Sarah,
Maybe I can jump in first here.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's sort of heard this because it's been in the media, but the reality is there's been real mental health tolls for people, right? So depression and anxiety rates are up virtually through the whole population. We call that in the workplace stress and burnout, but it's really the same kind of thing. And we've also seen that this affects people differently kind of generationally. So some of the younger folks in the talent pool may be more anxious about the physical workplace and the safety around that. They're much more comfortable maybe working from home, where maybe some of the folks that are more experienced, you know, 50-somethings, are quite eager to get back into that face-to-face office environment. And so you're seeing kind of a divide potentially happening among the workforce.
We are seeing leadership teams more often fray right now. So early in COVID, leadership teams were awesome. Most of our clients were meeting daily, right? They had a lot of emergencies. We had to get people off. We had to make sure they had technology. They had to make sure they were up and running. We had to make sure that we had skeleton staff in sort of our required work areas. So leadership teams were awesome, really came together. They have been holding the fort down and working really hard for 9 months. And now what we're starting to see is a fraying of leadership teams. So more siloed. In some cases, members withdrawing or disruptive, and sometimes, you know, sort of more dysfunctions in the teams, because, and the teams are really critical for you going forward when you think about coming up that curve, getting your teams really operating really effectively and making sure that they've got the energy and the focus to keep leading through this, because it's not going to be the rest of the curve isn't going to be short. It's going to be a big climb. Yeah. They're going to be critical.
And then another thing we're seeing is we're actually seeing a lot of people and leaders being stuck, you know, not necessarily taking perspective on where they are. So, you know, we see some who are frankly kind of in that denial space saying, I just got to wait and it's all going to go back to, you know, the old normal. You've got others who are leaning into kind of a command and control, saying, I want everybody back as fast as possible. We saw some of that in the summer when rates were lower, and staff actually reported to us, like, this feels a little tone deaf. I think people are missing how much of a change we've all gone through in liking this blended workforce. But the most common thing we're seeing, and actually I think we think is the most troubling, is that people are, leaders are often sort of stepping back and adopting a laissez-faire approach to this. I'm just going to let everybody decide what's best for them. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, leading in this is really hard. It's really uncomfortable. This is a human problem. It is a life and death situation in many cases. So it's natural that leaders might be struggling with, you know, how am I directive when it comes to people's health impacts and keeping people safe? But the reality is this is a change like any other, and it does require kind of stepping up, leading into the discomfort and leading through it.
Let's go on to some of the ugly or some of the concerns that we have that we think have long-term implications. So first of all, you got to remember, everybody's sitting looking into this box, and this box looks the same, and it doesn't matter who I am and who I work for, I'm just cranking out tasks in hours. So all the window dressing of going through, you know, big shiny doors with big signs on the top, getting my Starbucks with my friends from work, running into that mentor that who I highly value. A lot of that stuff's been stripped away. So what we're seeing, and we've certainly heard it early in COVID, and we're hearing it more again now, people questioning, do I still want to do this job? Do I still want to work for this company, or can I work for anybody, given that, you know, I'm going to sit here anyway? And we're seeing that particularly women in the workforce, because they've been shouldering a lot of the uncertainty around burden. uncertainty around COVID, I mean, as well as trying to work at the same time in many cases. Some of the younger people making values-based decisions, saying, I don't know if I want to be in this game. Surprisingly, at least surprising to me, being a 50-something-year-old, is that we're seeing 50-something-year-olds leave. Lots of our clients have reported losing some of their really talented leaders who go, yeah, I don't know if I want to operate in this new environment. And frankly, it's been kind of fun. You know, I may have worked hard, but it's been kind of fun working in different settings, and I'd like to have more flexibility. So we are, you know, we got some concerns around people losing some really talented people
some
in
really
this environment.
critical talent. And related to that, and something I frankly have worried about since the very beginning, when you may remember, one of the big messages coming out early in COVID is don't sell during the pandemic. Well, you know, we can't not sell for 9 months. And the reality is selling in this virtual model is super different and it's really hard, right? So access is really changed. It requires, and buyer expectations have also really changed, and it requires new skill sets and new technology-enabled digital selling. And some are actually, some of the most experienced, you know, salespeople are just actually saying what Sandra said, which is, I don't know that I really want to retool and do this in a whole new way. And even those who are saying I want to, it's really challenging.
Yeah, I think in addition, there's a certain amount of fear in the environment, so people are cutting back on everything, including development. And you know, we have some concerns around cutting back on development. One, the retention issue, which we talked about, but also the skill set issue. Operating, we'll talk about that when we get into sort of what our recommendations are, which we will in a couple minutes. But the operating in this environment requires a highly skilled leader, because you're going to have to take a much more customized approach. This engaging with people needs to continue. So figuring out how to operate in this environment requires really great leadership and really great ability to engage. So, you know, we think that that now is the time when you probably want to invest in your talent and in your leadership team. So you need to lead you through that next stage, coming back up that hill. There's a reason that Kubler-Ross makes it a hill. It's a hill. It's a big hill.
Yeah. And one of the things like related to that is also just this idea of creativity and innovation. You know, if you are an introvert, this has maybe been your best experience ever. The reality is that the vast majority of the folks in your, at least at your managerial and up through your leadership rank, are not, they're extroverts. And so actually being able to figure out, how do I collaborate? How do I innovate? How do we create as teams and as groups in this is really challenging. And I think that, again, if it's not sorted out, if we don't develop all of those new skills and capabilities, there can be significant long-term impacts of not being creative and not inventing.
So let's go to what you can be doing now. So the first thing that I think is a really important thing is to plant a new flag on the hill. Rally your leadership team, really start thinking about. McKinsey did a really great study that we're happy to share with you guys, and they basically asked a bunch of CEOs, 300 odd CEOs, what do you think will change? And they asked about 10 or 12 different factors, and their answer was something like, on all 10, 80% of CEOs said all will change. Everything will change. What markets you're in, what industries you're in, how you interact with staff, as Sarah said, how you interact with clients, your policies and procedures, they're all going to change. So whether or not your core strategy may not change, but aspects of it are probably going to change. So start thinking about what that is, engage your leadership team in it, put the flag on the hill, help people see the future, so they're not just stuck in this holding pattern down in the sort of the bottom of that change curve.
Yeah. Another piece that we're seeing is to really get into customizing the work to suit people's strengths. That might mean reorganizing teams, reorganizing roles, workflows, embracing asynchronous working, you know, allowing people to work in the hours that suit their work life and family situation, or their creativity in the best ways. It's tricky as leaders though, because it means you don't get to do one size fits all. So policies and procedures and that are a little bit tougher to get to, but we think it's critical.
And we think it's going to become, it's even more important as talent becomes more global. And like real estate, which moved fast, people got out of real estate fast, global talent has been moving pretty fast. Like we're hearing lots of clients going, couldn't hire this kind of digital talent previously, I might as well, but now I just found some in another, across the border, and I'm not expecting them to cross the border and come meet with me. So, so being able to customize people's approach to work and how they work is really important. I think this is going to sound counterintuitive. Take the focus off the videos. We are basically treating videos and meetings like either a phone or a physical workspace. So that's exhausting. When you've got someone on Zoom, you can see if you got 15 people on Zoom, if you want to, you can see everybody's personalities, you can see everybody's reaction to everything, much more so than you can in a meeting, which is why it's so exhausting. So start using the rest of the tool. Use, MS Teams has channels and it has places where you can post files. If we start looking to the technology industry and looking to our younger staff to teach us how to use technology more effectively and not just focus on being on the video screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're at 11:50, so why don't we give a chance for everyone to ask their questions?
Sure.
Don't see any coming in right now. So we have one question that came in. Going forward, will organizations be more flexible, focus mostly on remote working arrangements, or bring everyone back into the office? Sandra, want to get your answer?
It'll be blended. I think everything you read, everything we're hearing from people, it will be blended. So people are saying 60, 70% virtual. So you're in the office a day or two a week where you can. People will be looking. People have already looked at certain job categories and said that can easily, so call centers, that kind of thing, and that can easily, those people can easily stay home. We don't need to have them come into a workplace. So there's lots of examples of companies who have already started to make those kinds of decisions. And I think this is a big piece of work that, most companies are working on, but need to really look at and say, not only customizing this by job, but also by individual. So looking at individual circumstances and saying, okay, we need this person to be more virtual because of their personal situation. How are we going to make that work?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. How about for you, Sarah? What new skill sets will business development people need in this new environment?
So I think it's going to be things like having impactful insight in a very short period of time. So one of the things that definitely this has shown us is that buyer attention span is much shorter. So people are going to need to, when they do get the attention of the buyer, be really crisp and very compelling in terms of what they're offering and bringing genuine insight to those clients. I think we're also going to need sellers to really take control of the momentum of the sales process and get really creative around using digital tools and other, facets of the process and of the team to move things forward. I've been talking to a number of folks, both in sales and in IT, about how that is the partnership going forward. Sales and IT, think about IT as being a support function. It's actually a partner for sales, in my view, going forward, sales, marketing, and IT. So those are a couple of thoughts.
I see a note came out from Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Paul.
That's a great question. How do you measure performance? Well, could you really measure performance, or were you just actually measuring bums and seats before? I think is my first answer. But secondly, I think this is where leadership engagement is going to be really important. Leaders, they're not going to be able to lead from afar. They are going to be from afar, but actually talking, engaging with people, having a really good measurements in place and making sure you are measuring people's performance to the best of your ability in the same way you measure your business. Right. So if someone's committed to a bunch of goals, really, this is why I think leadership is going to be that much more challenging.
Absolutely.
And then really talking to people and understanding what they're doing in some sort of detail and talking to others around them. So that takes a lot more work, I think. But
yeah. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on establishing clarity up front around that. Really, really being clear on what is the expectation, what's the behavior that you're looking for, and then also upfront consequences if it's not met as well.
So Karen, taking the focus off video, first of all, no long meetings. We've heard stories of people doing 2 days on video, 4 hours. Try to keep it 1 hour, 2 hour, not much more than that.
And the time for bio breaks in between. So 55 minutes.
And you really, I think we're all of us, like Impact included, everybody's gonna have to do a whole lot more training on how to use the tools. So, start to pay attention to what you're seeing young people do. Like, Sarah and I were musing, our kids have gotten real, like they have not missed a beat. Hers are younger than mine, but they love this asynchronous learning. They come together when they need to come together. They use the tools. So in the case of MS Teams, you have channels, you have files, you have chat functions. So you can set everything up and then you can turn off and turn it on at 8 o'clock at night if you feel like it and see what everybody's done and make all of your changes without sending emails to people that they have to monitor. They can turn it on and go on at any time. And not that many of our clients are using these things really effectively. I think the tech industry is awesome at it. From all the podcasts that I've seen, but on this topic. But I really think it is. We're all going to have to learn that skill set, and that to me is should be a big focus for all leaders right now.
We have another question coming in. What advice would you offer leaders on how to effectively turn challenges into opportunities? Sarah, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. So I mean, that's something we've talked about for a long time. It's not a challenge, it's an opportunity. I think that what happens for us is when we see a challenge actually as a threat. And so to me, it's actually about changing the mindset. So when we think of a challenge as a threat, we go into that threat response, fight, flight, freeze, right? But when we actually see a challenge as a true challenge, so think about it like writing an exam or performing on a webinar as an example. As you see it as a real challenge, it actually fosters confidence, creativity, innovation. So a lot of it is around actually shifting the mindset around that, which is challenging work in itself, but can be done. There is a really great resource. We can send it out with this. It's called The Upside of Stress by Kelly McGonigal. That if you're a brain nerd like I am, goes through exactly what happens in the body and in the brain when you just shift the mindset around stress.
Yeah, and this is an opportunity. So I read in the Wall Street Journal this morning that Southwest Airlines is investing and entering new cities. And you're like, well, that's an interesting article. They're an airline, right?
Yeah.
When they did that after September 11th, they ran all the numbers. When they did that after airline crashes after September 11th, every time they went into a new market, they kicked the competition to the curb to the tune of 20%. So they're taking the opportunity to reinvent their business. Whether they'll be right or not, I don't know. But any kind of change means that everything's unfrozen, and it means that there are opportunities that you can take advantage of. And if we stay stuck in the bottom of that curve, we are just waiting, and it's not good for anybody. And so I love this Southwestern Airlines story because I thought, well, good for them. I'm hoping they're right. I might actually fly them in.
I think we have 3 more minutes left. So why don't we end off with the last question? What is the most important action that every leader should take to better support their teams during this time? So why don't we have an answer, Sandra?
Oh, flag on a hill and get your leadership going. So to me, no, hardly any CEOs do it on their own. So I like to say it's the first top 2 tiers of leadership, sometimes the first top 3. They have a huge impact on the culture of your organization. So pick your direction, make it really, really clear, communicate the heck out of it, and really engage your teams in it and get them doing the same. Because I think that's what people really need right now. They really need that flag on a hill.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the other piece is, develop the people. The reality is this next new normal is different. So people are going to need different mindsets, different behaviors, different skills and competencies around this. They could be different leadership competencies, but it could be even, how do I work better independently? How do I work asynchronously? How do I sell? How do I use the technology? How do I team? How do I deal with conflict? These are all new skill sets and competencies. And, by making that investment, you get everybody up the hill a little bit quicker.
So over to you, Morna.
Okay. Thank you, Sandra and Sarah. That comes to the end of the session. We want to keep this dialogue going, so feel free to send us your questions along the way. We'll make sure to follow up with a recording of this session, so you'll have all our links to our socials and emails there. Thank you again for everyone for attending, and please stay tuned to our next Ask Impact.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
great day and stay safe.